Welcome to Here Where You Belong, your go-to podcast for exploring belonging with your host and belonging expert, Dia Irby. We are thrilled to have you join us. Together, we'll dive into the depths of what it means for each of us to find our own place in the world, whether it's within our communities, our relationships, or within ourselves. Today's episode is meant to inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. So grab a cozy spot and settle in. Welcome to Here Where You Belong.
Hey, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Have I got a special guest today? I'm so excited that she agreed to join us and share all of her wisdom and experience. The Sharon Hill. Let me tell you just a little bit about Sharon Hill. She is an American Business Etiquette Trainer Association certified etiquette trainer and motivational speaker. She's the president of Sharon Hill International and author of several books on developing professionalism. Sharon has taken her critical life lessons from college to a professional career, distilling them into the top tips for every person should know to ensure his or her success. And she is on a mission to teach others how to make a positive impression and eliminate their insecurities that hinder them from feeling that they don't belong. And how clever. She published a book, well, multiple books, but one of them is Don't Be the Ugly Duckling at the Peacock Party. I now especially like the subtitle, Why Waddle When You Can Strut? Welcome, Sharon Hill. Awesomeness, author, speaker, and just awesome. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Dia. Such an honor. You're wonderful.
Anything you want to add to that?
I think you've covered, there's so much. I think you've got the pithy part of everything that I would have to say about myself. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Now, this is Here Where You Belong, where we talk about learning to belong, experiences where we didn't belong. How can we feel like we belong, or how can we help others feel like they belong? Do you have a story maybe about how you learned or dealt with this?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do, Dia. And even though it's dated, I just wonder how many people can relate to what I'm about to say about not feeling that one belongs. Way back in my childhood, south side of Chicago, I was about 8 years old, going to a school where I had a boyfriend named Michael Ingram, and we would hold hands sometimes. And my best friend was Jeanette Hickman, and life was good. Life was good. I didn't know anything else except life was good when you're 7 or 8 years old. But then one day, my friend Jeanette said, Sharon, why don't you come to my house for lunch tomorrow? My mother would love to have us for lunch. You see, in those days, I would carry my lunch in a brown bag and eat lunch at school. Now I was invited to Jeanette Hickman's house. Well, that was special. I told my mother that evening, Jeanette Hickman invited me to come by her house tomorrow for lunch. I couldn't understand why my mother laid out my Sunday best for this lunch at Jeanette Hickman's house. Red taffeta dress, black patent leather shoes. For lunch, I had no idea. Well, the next day, I was very excited to go to Jeanette's house. You see, Jeanette's house was a beautifully white painted house with green trim, a very lush lawn. I lived in a house that my father was still building. We lived in, let's say, what will become the garage in the back as he was building his house. I knew nothing about figurines on the fireplace like Jeanette Hickman's mother had. When I walked into her house, my patent leather shoes just sank into the lush green carpeting. Wow, this is really nice. Jeanette's mother said, so you're Sharon? Yes, ma'am. I always knew to use my best courtesy. Yes, ma'am, I'm Sharon. Very happy to meet you. She invited us into the kitchen where she had lunch prepared for us. Keep in mind, I'm used to just lunch in a paper bag. Now she's got lunch spread out on plates, actual plates. We ate off of paper plates or plastic plates. She had, we called it hard plates. I guess the term now is ceramic, but she had plates. She served us our Kool-Aid in real glasses. We were used to drinking from jelly jars. We didn't have anything, but I didn't realize I had nothing until I saw this comparison. My goodness, she cut the crust off the bread, Dia, to make little triangular sandwiches. Oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it. Jeanette and I sat and talked about 7-year-old things and Michael Ingram, my boyfriend. It was just so delightful. She served us dessert on a different plate. I thought I died and gone to heaven. It was wonderful. When it was all over, I thanked Mrs. Hickman for a lovely lunch, went back to school, and that was that. Until the next day. When I saw Jeanette, I said, Jeanette, thank you so much for yesterday. I just cannot tell you how much I appreciated it. And I noticed, Dia, that she had a scowl on her face as she was looking at me. I said, what's wrong, Jeanette? She put her hands on her hips and she said, my mama said we can't have you by our house anymore. Well, why not? What did I do? I won't use the exact term she used, but you'll get it. She said, because my mama said you're an N-word and we never allow N-words in our house, but she didn't know. And since you were already there, she went ahead and let you in. I said, what? This is my first feeling, maybe I don't belong because she's telling me I'm different. I had no idea I was different. And you know how kids are. Jeanette would tell all the kids in school, Sharon is an N-word, Sharon is an N-word. Michael Ingram wouldn't hold my hand anymore. Michael Ingram was no longer my boyfriend. The kids would chase me after school. They would throw rocks at me. I even hid under bushes sometimes when I saw them coming across as a group. And one day they saw me and pulled me out and I had to run home. What in the world changed? I'm still the same person, but now I don't belong. That was my first foray into not belonging. And they say, dear, every curse has a blessing, because that curse, which now made me feel insecure, made me feel worthless, making me feel I didn't belong, was the start of it all. So that's my story as to not belonging.
How, well, were there other students that were like you at school?
I should have mentioned that. I was the only Black child in the school. I didn't know that I was different. You see, I was born on the South Side in the regular neighborhoods, but my father wanted to move us out of the city where we could be safer, where we'd have more privacy. So that's why he was building his house, our house, on the outskirts of Chicago. And by being at the time, the outskirts, Chicago's grown so much now. So when I started school, I did not realize that I was Black. I didn't know anything about race. That's why nobody could defend me, because they're all listening to Jeanette Hickman and thinking, oh, Sharon's different, which also shows the innocence of children. Why I believe racism is learned, is being taught by those who might be considered racist. And sure enough, after that, I noticed that all the white families, as more Black families started moving into our neighborhood, were leaving. And the school eventually became mostly non-white, let's put it that way. But at the time, I had no idea. Now I know why my mother laid out the nice clothes, because she wanted to make sure that I looked, I guess professional is not the right word, but I looked decent, that I looked acceptable.
Right.
That's it. By the way, I told my mother what happened. She called and she let Mrs. Hickman have it. So that made my mother feel better, but in me, I called it my scar. I now felt scarred that I just don't belong. And throughout my life, and I can tell you more as to how I had to overcome that. With that feeling in mind, when I see people who feel for any reason they don't belong, I refer back to my history to find out how I can bring them in to let them know, no, don't go for that. Don't go for that. You belong.
Well, first of all, I'm so sorry that happened, but we're going to talk about later your favorite quote. What those things that happen to us are what make us become, we fight to be our best selves.
Yes.
And if we haven't ever had to be thrown in the, rock tumbler to have the edges rubbed off, we can't appreciate any growth or any change.
Exactly.
So what helped you overcome that? Or do you still, you feel like you belong now?
Yes, as a matter of fact, what had happened is it was compounded by the fact that my grandmother, out of her love for me and wanting to protect me, gave me the following statement. Well, two things. Well, first the statement, and then followed up with what she wanted me to become as an occupation. She said, Sharon, never argue with a white man. The white man is always right. Now that I know that white men are different, I said, okay. Therefore, she and my mother both said they would be delighted if I'm backing up here a second. I got honors classes in high school, which meant that I was above a lot of the other classes, which surprised me. They said they'd be happy if I would become a secretary, a nurse, or a school teacher. That's as far as they could see. That would be the top of the world if I could become that. Now, hearing that,
So proud of you to have
no,
those
look at what's so with that in mind.
They didn't put in there president of your own organization.
That wasn't even in the stars. And keeping in mind the times in which are different now, but you're absolutely right. So what changed? Now I'm thinking, okay, I don't belong. I'll be happy to be a teacher. I went to Chicago Teachers College, got kicked out. That's another story. But I knew that the more I accomplished, the more I saw, wait a minute, maybe I do belong. And it all started at IBM. If I can tell you a very quick story, because I was a secretary. I did become a secretary, and I figured, I guess this is as high as I'm going to go in life, a secretary. That's what they wanted, and that's what I am. Until one day, the guy who would come in to fix our equipment in our office told me that IBM was hiring. Now, keep in mind, I flunked out of college, and I was going to night school. Little details I'll leave for another time. But everybody at IBM definitely either had a master's degree or at least a bachelor's degree. I was still going to community college. He said, you ought to try out for IBM. I just knew that IBM was IBM. I knew nothing about it. The building that I was a secretary in was across the river in Chicago from IBM, which was the whole building. But Dia, I think this is the track of my life that got me on the right path. I told myself, what have I got to lose? What have I got to lose? So I changed my clothes. I got out of my hoochie mama clothes and I put on business clothes. This is with no guidance. I just thought this must be the right thing to do. Got sensible shoes, sensible purse.
Well, maybe it goes back to your mom getting out the best clothes for you.
Now that you mention it, you know, I never thought about that.
You have something important to do. You dress for success.
Dress for success. Dia, I swear, after all these years, I never put that together. That's exactly right. Dress for the occasion, dress for success. That's what I did. I went on the interview. Because I figured I had nothing to lose, I talked to my interviewer. Name was Pat. May she rest in peace. And Pat and I were laughing and just talking because I figured I had nothing to lose. I don't have a college degree. I'm a secretary. I left.
For being yourself.
Exactly. I was being myself as far as, that's a message that I tell women especially. I left thinking that was fun, but I'm probably not going to get it, but at least I tried. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Pat's secretary telling me that Pat's manager, Laura, wanted me to come back for another interview with her. Oh, put on my same sensible clothes, went for the interview, and again, and they sent me out with another person, an IBMer, to see what the job was like. And I figured they're being nice to me, but they don't know that I don't belong. So I'll go along with this. What have I got to lose? 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. They wanted to hire me at 4 times what I was making as a secretary. And the stipulation was I had to get a college degree. I had to work during the day, go to school at night and on weekends. That focused my thinking now, Dia, because now instead of hanging out with all my hoodlum friends on Saturday and going dancing and drinking, I had to study. This changed my mindset as far as maybe, thank God that I got this opportunity. I don't want to blow it. My life started changing now as to a mindset of if I do everything right, maybe I'll belong. I studied all the materials I had to do the job well. I got promotions and long story, that's what started me on the path of thinking, I'll be darned. I can do this. And then when I saw in IBM, some of the white men managers were screwing up things all over the place and the stock was dropping. I said, what? I was working on products, didn't make any sense. What? But I figured, who am I to say anything about it? That, Dia, took years for me to eventually turn to say, wait a minute. I belong, and I'm going to share the story I just told you with anybody who feels insecure or who just feels if the color of their skin is a detriment. Wait a minute, let's talk about that. Let's get that out of the way. So that's when things started to turn, was at IBM.
Awesome, awesome. And speaking of going in for an interview or being comfortable in your own skin and belonging to yourself, you have developed a whole training program. You speak on this. You've got your book I love. Don't be the ugly duckling at the peacock party. I can see how understanding everything you teach help someone feel like they belong, because it builds up confidence. It builds up, well, you do fit in. You can belong. What are some of I think you've got 35 tips for corporate work, or 24 tips for college students. We don't have forever. How about a couple of as someone's going in for an interview and you have 3 minutes to tell them the main thing they should remember etiquette wise, what would you say?
Well, the first thing I say, before you even get to the interview, is like you just said, first of all, dress properly. And in that case, I would suggest watching how the people dress for the job that you're in. One example, when I was with IBM, this is a war story. At IBM, at the day, all the gentlemen wore blue suits, wingtip shoes, white shirts, and a red tie. They were sent off to Levi Strauss to try to sell some computer equipment. Everybody at Levi Strauss, well, guess what? Blue jeans. IBMers were out of place. I give that example to say, just know where you're going and know how you should dress. Now, when you get to the job, it depends on the logistics, but let's just speak very generally. If you can have a personal business card, you're not working yet, so you have a card with just your name and perhaps your email address. Give it to the receptionist and let her know that you're there. Then take a seat. Don't look at your phone. Don't look at your iPad. Sit and wait to be called upon, because right now that's the most important part of your day. If they offer you something to drink, don't take it. Just sit and wait for them to come get you, to fetch you. Then when you're fetched and you're in the person's office getting ready to talk, have questions in mind, do your homework, but to sell yourself, make your voice be strong, speak with confidence, don't cut them off when they're talking to you, answer the questions that you're asked. If you don't have a good answer, be honest about it. Don't never get caught in a lie. For example, I don't know about that, but I do know about this, which is what we teach us in Toastmasters as far as how to answer questions. And then when you're through, always have a firm handshake. Now in COVID, that took a back seat because of touching. But now that COVID's kind of on the back seat, don't be afraid to give a firm handshake. And if it's not a handshake, take your cue from the person interviewing. Is it a fist bump, namaste, whatever it is, but be confident with your greeting when you come in and when you leave. Just show some confidence. Don't chew gum. Don't have your phone on. This is so obvious, Dia, but you'd be amazed at how the new generation Z doesn't automatically know that. Use
That's why you have to lay it out and say.
Yes.
Think of other tips. I know that you tell people, look the person in the eye when you're talking to them.
Exactly right. Look them in the eye, because if you're looking down or looking across or avoiding their eyes, they're going to think, what is she or he hiding? You're exactly right. Look people in the eye. And the point I give, if you have trouble looking people in the eye, I talk about the third eye, the space between your eyebrows and the bridge of your nose. We call that the third eye. When you look at a person in their third eye, it looks exactly like you're looking them in the eye. And I have, during my classes, people test that out. People think that's silly. But if you have trouble making eye contact, if you're talking to a person who's glaring at you, or if you're looking at a person who has a tic, or a person who has acne, or a person who has a sty, rather than being distracted, look at the third eye. Then they're comfortable that you're not watching whatever is wrong with their face, that you're comfortable in their presence, make them comfortable with you. Third eye is another point. Thanks for bringing that up. Eye contact is very important.
That's very helpful, because I do intently look people in the eye, but then I get confused. Do I look at the right eye? Do I look at the left eye? Do I look at the right eye? Do I look at the left eye? And then like, oh, why don't I look at the third eye?
The third eye. And it's completely natural to if somebody asks you a question, to look down, look up, look up. There's a whole science between how you look at people, but you don't have to glare at them the whole time. I tend to be stark on people's eyes. And sometimes I tell myself break the eye contact a little in case they get a little nervous. Why is she staring at me so hard?
Right. You could pause when you're thinking of answering a question and go, like I'm thinking, and then look at them again.
And look at them again. Even put a finger up to let them know you're thinking, and then go back to looking.
Oh, good tip. See, we could just go on and on and on all these tips. But we're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back with the amazing Sharon Hill after this break. Hey there! Isn't my guest amazing? So glad you joined us today. In this world that often feels disconnected, building community and fostering belonging are essential. That's why I created this podcast, to bring inspiring people to you, to encourage you to create that sense of belonging and community, no matter where you are. If you're being blessed by my guests, and we have some more, like, subscribe, and share this podcast. You know who needs to hear this. Stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you belong. Now, back to our amazing guest. And we're back with the amazing Sharon Hill. Oh, I know that we could go forever and ever and ever on all these tips on how to interview, especially how to behave at a formal dinner when people are watching you. We don't have time to go into all that. We could have you back, or people could go to Amazon and buy your books, or could hire you to come and talk to the group.
Right.
Like you present table etiquette to NC State football players?
Yes, 3 years I've taught NC State football players dining etiquette at their stadium, which was exciting. I mostly speak to colleges, universities across the country. A lot of my business is word of mouth, Dia, which shocks me sometimes because you spend a lot of money on marketing and then word of mouth seems to do it for me. But I'm honored to say that a lot of folks enjoy my dining etiquette so much that they tell their friends who have businesses or corporations or associations, and then I'm traveling to go speak about dining etiquette. Why is dining etiquette important? When I ask them, well, what would you want to focus on? A lot of the corporations tell me they hire Gen X, Gen Z, excuse me, Gen Y, Gen Z kids into their companies. But then if those kids, my term, not theirs, have to take clients to a business dinner or a business lunch, they don't show good dining etiquette. And they could even say it might even cost them money in terms of the person being embarrassed. Say it another way. If I'm the client and I see the company, you had me going to dinner with one of your people, and I'm seeing that person is chewing with his or her mouth open, they don't know which fork to use, they make all the faux pas. I'm thinking, do I really want to work with this company? It's about dollars and cents.
They're asking me to invest a bunch of money in this company.
Yes,
And this
yes.
is the representation I'm faced with.
Perfect. That's exactly why. It's about the money and just to make sure. And just for a war story, when I was at IBM, Ray Cockfield, who at the time was the global vice president of diversity, big shot. He was a buddy of mine. When I told him I did dining etiquette, he told me the following story. I'll say it fast. He said they had one in the old days when IBM was a lot bigger than it is now. They invite a lot of master students, best of the best, the cream of the crop from around the country to a formal black tie dinner to interview these students and see which ones I want to bring into IBM. Starting salary around $75,000 a year back in the day.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. Ray said they were at the table. Ray reached for his bread plate, but the gentleman, the young fella on his left, took the bread plate. Ray looked on this side for a bread plate, and the person on this side used the correct bread plate, leaving Ray with no bread plate. Ray said he signaled the server and said, "Could you please bring me another bread plate, please?" The next day, Ray went into human resources at IBM, and these are his words. He told human resources, "Do not hire that guy, the person who was sitting to his left, because he took the bread plate." They didn't tell HR, they just said, "Don't hire him." I said, "Ray, because he took your bread plate?" And back to the point you just said, Dia, Ray said, if that student is going to represent IBM with clients for $1 million contracts and he doesn't know proper dining etiquette, we don't want him. $75,000, Dia, blown. The kid may have never known. That's why he was not offered a job at IBM, but because he did not know dining etiquette. And I tell this at all my dining etiquette when I start. Why is this important? $75,000, Dia, and because of a bread plate, that kid did not get an offer at IBM. This is important, and that's why I want to make sure everybody, especially folks who I know probably really need it. And I didn't ask for NC State. They came to me for the football team, which I love. Great group of guys. And just showing them, because I tell them, gentlemen, what if your team becomes the national champion and you're invited to the White House for dinner, or you're invited to the governor's mansion for dinner? You're going to sit at a table and you're going to see things that you may have no idea. What is this? What are all these forks doing over here? How do I pass the food? How do I signal to my waiter? This is why you need dining etiquette. That's how I start with, so I know how important it is.
There's a Bible verse that says, he who is skilled in his labor will stand before kings.
Ooh, I like it.
So that has so much we don't, that'll preach. But the idea is be prepared to stand before kings
Yes.
and prepare that. Now, there are some people, not to play the devil's advocate, well, why should people care about etiquette? I mean, so what if they use the wrong fork? So what if I would use the wrong fork? I'm being me, and they should care more about my character than about which fork I use.
And the answer is it depends on that host. Because if that host does not know any of the dining etiquette rules, you're off the hook if they don't know. Although there may be other people at that table watching you, you never know. But it's better to be safe than sorry. What if you do get a person who does know the rules? I had another person at NC State, another one of the schools, say she was overseas doing something. Some kind of way, somebody said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing at the dinner table, and she came back and said they don't want that person. You're always being watched. You're always being judged. Therefore, by having the etiquette rules in your back pocket, then you can focus more on selling yourself rather than wondering, is this important? Not being watched if I use the wrong fork, which fork should I be using? And if you don't care which fork you're using, if you don't care if they care whether the fork you're using, it could backfire. Better to be safe than sorry. You never know what people are thinking. And then if they don't know the rules, go ahead.
I've always heard, watch the host.
Yes, watch the host. Except I
Don't
have a
pick
story.
up a fork. Don't pick up. Don't take a sip. Do
Oh,
not.
right. Don't eat before the, don't sit down before the host.
Whatever the host is doing, follow their lead.
Although I just heard this about a month ago, a person said they were at a meal and the host, he was the president of their company, took everybody out to dinner. The host took his plate when he was finished and licked it.
No,
I said, oh, no.
everybody else do that.
Some hosts don't have it together. Yeah, that was an exception, not the rule, but you're right. Overall, watch the host.
Well, would you agree with this statement that the reason we want to respect rules of etiquette is because, in our culture at least, it is a way that we respect the people with us. We are showing them respect, just like you were taught to say, yes, ma'am.
Exactly.
Using a respectful title or greeting says, I am respecting who you are and I'm respecting you. When you use table etiquette, you're saying, I care more about how you feel and if you're comfortable and not distracted by my improper behavior.
Exactly.
So it's not to be snooty, it's to be respectful.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Very well said. It's got combination of respect, manners, elegance. If there's so much involved in here, so much unsaid, beneath the surface. Yeah, we have the etiquette rules, but what you just said, Dia, is critical. There's a reason why. And when everyone feels respected, when everyone feels that you're taking time, for example, people say, when should you start eating? If it's everybody around the table and people serve different times, when should you start eating? So my rule of thumb is most people say, don't start until everybody has their plate, except if it's the entree portion where you have a hot meal and you have 10 people at the table. The rule is wait until about half of the people have their food. If you have your food, rather than waiting for everybody to get their food, ask those who don't have it, do you mind if I start? If you don't have your food and you see half the table does have their food and they're waiting for you, you should say, don't wait for me. Please go ahead and enjoy your meal because you don't want the food to get cold. So you're respecting them by letting them have a permission to go ahead and eat. Now everybody's comfortable. Little things like that make a difference.
Okay, so your favorite quote is, life is 10% what happens to you, which we heard your story, and 90% how you choose to react, which we know how you have responded, learning etiquette, learning how to behave, overcoming your previous mental training. Tell me more about why you chose that for your favorite quote.
Because I find it applies to everybody. And I see some people have silly seasons. For example, when I say silly, I work with a guy at IBM who built a house, that's fine. And he wanted peach colored curtains, it's fine. But when the curtains arrived, they were pink, not peach. You would have thought somebody dropped a bomb on his house. He couldn't let it go. He was going on and on and on. I thought, man, what? This for this? People are starving and living under bridges and you're losing your mind because send them back and get the right color. That is a reaction. 10% is he got the wrong color curtains. 90% he went off. Crazy. I see so many people get so hung up, even to the terms of violence, Dia, over things that what does it really matter? And
Yeah,
how I
5
spend
years from now, 10 years from now, will anybody even remember?
I thank you so much. I even say a year from now, people even remember because they go off. They just go off. And there's just no reason for it in my observation. So look how much time I wasted thinking I didn't belong because of that 10% that happened to me. It took me years to do the 90% to react to it in a way that now I can go ahead and help others, but still feeling insecure, still feeling not belonging, still feeling subhuman. I wasted all that time when my 90% should have been on reacting in a pop. But when you're a child, I mean, 7 or 8 years old, how would I know? But when you're an adult acting like that, what is wrong? Think about it. Like you said, Dia, a year from now, 10 years from now, what difference does it make? And yet some people live their life. Well, I know what she said, but this is what she meant. What? Please, come on,
No,
people.
no, you are not a mind reader. You do not know. And usually it's not about you. It's an issue somebody else is dealing with.
Exactly,
I
exactly.
saw a quote, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but you're not even on the road to success if you blame other people for everything.
Amen to that. Blame shifting, I have no patience with that. And
If you
Dia,
blame yourself, you're halfway there.
and willing to admit you made a mistake. I always say, if you make a
Don't
mistake,
blame anybody and say, this happened, move on. You're there.
I've learned that.
That is our emotional intelligence. We need to grow in our emotional intelligence.
Absolutely, absolutely. Easier said than done, but you're absolutely right.
Well, only 35% of the people in the world even have any emotional intelligence.
35%, that's all. I believe it. I believe it.
And there's a lot of stuff about emotional intelligence that we all need to focus on and grow in
Yes.
all the areas.
Yes.
I love you are a leader. Your greatest accomplishment you listed was being the past president, which means you used to be the president of 4 nonprofit organizations.
Yes.
Now, from somebody that was told you can't be anything, or maybe you'll be a teacher or a secretary, 4 nonprofit organizations. You want to tell us about any or some of them or all of them?
Yes, the story began with my statement, which went back to my very first interview with IBM, and that is, what have I got to lose? Just say yes. At one point, was I still at IBM? I moved on from IBM now, trying to get my company started. A woman said, Sharon, we have this organization called ISPI, International Society for Performance Improvement. She was the president. I have no idea what that is. She said, would you consider being president next year? I had no idea what she was talking about, but I said yes. That was my first foray into being the president of a nonprofit organization for performance improvement. I learned about it, rolled up my sleeves and learned about it. I always believe just say yes, but learn about it, understand it, make yourself smart in whatever you're supposed to be leading. How can I lead an organization I know nothing about? But I learned how to lead it. Then after that, I was asked to join the Big Brothers, Big Sisters of the Triangle as a board member. Then the next thing you know, I was the secretary of the thing, and the next thing you know, I'm the president for 2 years of Big Brothers, Big Sisters of the Triangle. Talk about an experience for giving back and helping children. That was wonderful. Then at the same time, I was asked to join the NAWBO, National Association of Women Business Owners, as a guest. Yes, I'll be a guest. After a certain period of time, they asked me to join these bring in the speakers, what do you call it? Just have different roles until eventually they asked me to president, National Association of Women Business Owners of the Triangle. At the same time, I was district director for Toastmasters. That was in 2010. So I had 2. I was president of an organization and head of the state of North Carolina Toastmasters. It's all a matter of time management, saying yes, and understanding what it involved. Dia, I tell most women, this is something that I learned. Most women, when they're asked to do something, men say yes. They automatically say yes with not a clue what they're going to. Yes. And I saw this happen at IBM. Yes. Women, as I noticed, ask questions. How long does it take? Who are my stakeholders? What happens if I fail? How much time do I have? Blah, 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 blah. So you see the difference. I learned to think like a man in terms of I will say yes. And then that took me to all those boards of directors, which I absolutely love because I was giving back. And also, especially for the big brothers, big sisters, showing these kids whose mother may have been a crack addict, kids whose father may have been alcoholic and figured they had no place to go in life, pairing them up with a mentor to take them to a baseball game, to take them to a football game, to show them what it's like to eat in a restaurant. That's giving back and showing these kids they belong. So that was the biggest one.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, I know we could go on forever. I do have the privilege of being with you in 2 Toastmasters clubs, even though I know you're in 4 others, or maybe 5 or
8. Time management.
This has been fabulous, learning about how you learned that you did belong, and knowing that your 10% didn't mess up the rest of your 90% of your life.
Exactly. Thank you.
Moved on. And you have a very valuable message that you can give to people to help them know that they belong, and that you can feel confident that you belong in the world if you can operate, function well within the culture, at a table, at a party, at an interview. Knowing that you are confident in your skills will help you recognize that you do belong. Before we close, do you have any last parting message for our listeners?
I believe that every curse has a blessing. And when IBM decided it was time to cut headcount, even though I had worldwide marketing responsibility and a crew of 50, I hate to say employees, but 50 folks on my team around the world, I got out and I started my own company. The blessing was, now, what am I going to do with myself? And then saying yes to opportunities to get my company started, Sharon Hill International. So don't let bad things just tear you down, make you alcoholic, suicidal, or whatever. There's got to be something better around the corner. One door closes, another door opens. Yeah, we know that. But please just know that, look at the bright side of everything. Find it. It may not happen on the timetable that you want, but it's going to happen. And I'm a living example of it.
I love it. Well, there you have it, folks. We have another episode of Here Where You Belong, and I'm so glad you were able to join us. Remember to stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember that you belong. Until next time, Dia Irby, the host of Here Where You Belong. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Here Where You Belong. We hope today's episode has inspired you to embrace the beauty of belonging in your own life. Remember, no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. Join us again next time for more insightful conversations and heartwarming stories. Until then, stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember that you belong.